Hi, everybody. Welcome to the last session of the Pluriversal Design Book Club for 2020. It's been a long year, but I hope for you as well. This has been a good year for growth and lots of exciting stuff. My name is Leslie Ann Noel, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Pluriversal Design Special Interest Group. And we lead this book club among other really exciting projects within the DRS. And now I'll hand over to Renata.
Hi, my name is Renata Leitão, and I'm the other co-chair of the Pluriversal Design SIG. And today we have our last meeting of the book club of the semester. We're going to discuss, please give suggestions of books that you want to share, that you want to present, that you want to discuss. But this book that we are going to discuss today is very, very, very exciting. And I hand it to Gloria to do the presentation. Thank you so much, Gloria, for presenting it today.
My name is Gloria Gomez, and I put my hand up to review this book, A World of Many Worlds, for the Pluriversal Design SIG Book Club. I will give you a little bit of my background as we go into the conversation, into the review. Oops. Okay, so the title of the book is A World of Many Worlds, and the editors are Marisol de la Cadena and Mario Blaser. Mario Blaser, I think, is the name. I think. I could be wrong, but I think that is more like in Spanish, Blaser. 6 chapters, 4 co-authored, 3 co-authored, including the intro. Publisher, Duke University Press, year 2018. And this book is a result, it's like the final stage of something called the Mellon Sawyer Seminar, Indigenous Cosmopolitics, Dialogues about the Reconstitution of Worlds. Weekly meetings with students in the year 2012-13, and also guests that visited and added to the conversations. And some of the guests made it into the book. So quite exciting project, inspiration for all of us. There is a page with the author's knowledge backgrounds. I am not gonna read every single one, but just, just survey the backgrounds, guys. And you will see that all of them are in different places of the world, Canada, some of them in Latin America, others in North America, and also Europe. Almost half of them are female, the rest are male. But what I see in common is that they all come from the area of anthropology or philosophy and indigenous research, and they practice through STS. Okay. The reviewer's knowledge background. So I am an applied design researcher in novel practice. That's how I see myself in this identity as a knowledge expert. My expertise is in the fields of graphic design, visual interface design, GUI design, interaction design, inclusive design. Expertise specifically, I work in the area of educational practice, early childhood education, postgraduate medical education, in general, higher education, informal learning. Topics of research: human-centered design, technologies for teaching and learning, preschool concept mapping, algebra in early primary education, assistive technology for studying and working. How I see this book relevant to my work? I am interested in the interpretation of culture. Probably since I started at university with my bachelor degree almost 30 years ago. This book illustrates approaches of interpretation of culture from anthropological and philosophical perspectives in the topic of the pluriverse. So that's how I see that is relevant, since I joined the Pluriversal Design Group as part of the People Conference. I feel that, those are the connections that I draw to my practice and my backgrounds. Some tools used to undertake the interpretations can be of use to me, and we will get into that when I review some of the sections of the book that caught my attention, and in my practices as designer. When I look at some of my practices, I do rapid ethnographic approaches. I review secondary sources in different formats, and I work with rapid functional prototypes to engage with communities. And I feel that these are the practices that connect with what these authors are talking about in the book. In each chapter, the authors appear to start with the introduction of a writing project in the form of an idea or a claim to explore from their perspective as philosophers or anthropologists. The idea or claim is slowly developed. The purpose is stated often clearly at the start. The development of the idea may entail a historical account narrated beautifully, explained in some detail. The historical account or case often contains a seminal idea, notion, concept that it is slowly weaved, connected, related to a modern contemporary situation. In doing so, each author appears to show, illustrate a way to connect. For example, contemporary universal situations or projects with our modern traditional ways of being, thinking, and feeling. Traditions, behaviors. Emergent pluriversal or multiversal situations, again, projects with indigenous ways of being, thinking, and feeling are the ones that are of interest, so we can connect them to the modern activities or the modern practitioner activities that the book is trying to inspire us to think about. I must say that this review is mainly informed by my personal understanding of the book. I have only consulted online dictionaries for the meaning of words like isonomia or allophones. Some of the words were a bit big for me, but I tried my best. And I did a Wikipedia review for learning more about the science words, which was something that I actually went through. I felt it, but I didn't know that it existed as a concept that has been formalized through study. So from now on, what I will do is that I will go into each chapter, and I will take, I use 2 slides or between 1 or 3 slides to explain a few concepts, to show a few ideas, and then I will conclude. Chapter 0, proposal for a world of many worlds. So I needed to understand for myself, is ask, what does the Zapatista Declaration actually say, right? So the authors have their own translation of the declaration, of the call. I won't read the whole quote. I will just focus on the sections highlighted, but I will invite you to come, to read along with me. So the idea of the declaration is to walk together, the many worlds that make us, and to find a way to practice through our practices to obtain a world that we want, where we all fit. The world we want is a world in which many worlds fit. So it's just basically, the idea is that there is no one single universe, it's not one place, it's a place for everyone who is different to come together into a conversation, a collaboration, and interaction through practices. So what is the book about? They say that their proposal is, for the pluriversal, is analytic, ethnographic. What they do is that they present experiences, they tell us stories of fieldwork, of worldling. And through these examples, they show human practices with earth beings and with animal spirits that populate forests. So basically what they are telling us is that the pluriverse not only talks about protecting the needs of the practices of the wishes of humans, but also of non-humans. So to recognize, to do designs for a pluriverse requires that we recognize that a mountain, a river, are beings. Something that caught my attention really deeply is this idea of it matters what concepts we use to think concepts, because this is what we academics do all the time. You know, we go, and since I do rapid ethnographic interventions, you know, I do this all the time. So of course, as soon as I read this paragraph, this caught my attention. The authors say, knowledges are world-making practices. And one thing that happens, you know, through these practices is what the community of knowledge does not recognize as knowledge is displaced along with its reality-making possibilities. The last part of this paragraph actually took me, I said, yes, I have experienced this situation many times through my design activities, you know, when I develop a working prototype, a functional prototype for a community to engage with it, and then the community finds its own way to interpret it and do something different with it. Becoming aware of the kinds of things we bring into people's worlds is very important for pluriversal design. Okay, except now I'm going into chapter 1. So the chapter 1 is called Opening Up Relations. And in this chapter, the author goes back, the section of the chapter that caught my attention is that the author goes back to the La Cadena calls the subject-object mode of relationality. Again, these are somewhat big words for me, but I am trying hard. And she I forget her name, Marilyn, is applying it to how we make things known. And what she's saying is that the starting point is a salient anthropological assumption in making relations known, so that relations appear as an object of knowledge. Okay, my reflection on this is that, paraphrasing the La Cadena, Veran, which is another author that I am going to talk about later, and Strathern, going to a sentence, this chapter is on scholarly knowledge, the relevance of concepts as a matter of ethnographic concern. As analytical tools used to produce knowledge, they carry a self and explain difference away. So that's the reason why whatever we produce as academics is so important to be very careful with, because they matter. They matter for us as academics, and they matter for the communities that we are intervening, or we are working with, or we are collaborating with. So chapter 2, Spiderweb Anthropologies by Alberto Corsin Jimenez. The section that caught my attention in this chapter is he talks about the figure of the spider web as a heuristic to help us think. Our current predicament of expulsion, ruin, and precarity. You know, what's happening with us in the world right now. He talks about it as the semblance of its semblance and vocation as a trap, a metaphoric seduction. And he says that spiderwebs are traps. They're conditioned as material and epistemic interfaces between worlds that capture. So what caught my attention as an interface designer here, you know, these concepts of heuristics, metaphor, method, seductive trap, interfaces between worlds. And I was thinking, oh, this is what I am doing a lot in my practice. And yeah, so it's interesting to see, my mind working through these concepts and trying to find a way to grasp them and make them my own. He starts with explaining how this spyware analytic tool has been seen in indigenous anthropologists like the Nausu and the Daribis ethnographies. And it's developed from a concept by Roy Wagner, double encompassment, that characterizes all forms of symbolic agency. So basically, it's like everyone is trapped within the spider web. And in that, the host and the guest interact. There are beautiful accounts in this chapter. If anyone is interested in reading the stories as to how the author moves from the indigenous knowledge to the modern thought, please go for it. It's quite inspiring. There are three qualities of the spiderweb trap, and they connect with concepts that we somewhat know a little bit, the entanglements, the ecological infrastructures, and the trap for descriptions of own appearances, embodying and interiorizing and exteriorizing recursions that accompany the location of an environment. These are big words for me. So what I had to do is to find an example. So one of the examples that this author provides, it's an exhibition hall where government bodies and a radical collective, they engage, right? The story tells that they have never met before, but the radical collective was invited to the exhibition, and the exhibition is used as a trap to enchant everyone. So in the quotes next to the photo, I put in the second paragraph, the city hall wanting to establish some kind of dialogue with radical collective like us. Sure, he retorted. This is someone that said, yeah, but they didn't really formally talk to us. They didn't really acknowledge us or put us in the program. But then the author says, sure, he retorted, but here we are, seated around a gigantic piece of furniture, playing a game of seduction with them, the government, the politicians. And then he continues to say, as an open source and auto-constructive piece of furniture, then the stand was neither host nor guest to the classical environmental policies. So this is a way to put this concept of the spider web in practice in modern projects. Okay, chapter 3, The Challenges of Ontological Politics by Isabel Stengers. So here, what she does is an amazing thing for a call for academics to change our epistemic tools for thinking and working in research. So she calls us that we need to become agents of modernization. She calls for us to transform ourselves, to disentangle ourselves from the traditional knowledge economy and the machine that is, destroying the world. This is a call to scientists and academics so we can participate in the designing a pluriverse according to the Zapatista call. She says that if we don't do the transformation, we won't be able to answer the call at all. She invites us to become diplomats, so we can actually work with her thought experiment. So actually in the paper, she provides a thought experiment about the possibility of distinguishing between agents of modernization, and academics are invited to become modern scientific practitioners. And this new type of academic should be is someone who engages with worldling and diverse worlds with renewed epistemic practices that care equally about humans and non-humans, who give same value to physics and mythology, to inform a science that wins on relevance, not authority, so we are able to respond to the call for a universe. She says that there is nothing wrong with us as practitioners, so we are cool. What is wrong is the tools and that we are using to make science possible. Now, chapter 4 is Helen Veran, the politics of working cosmologies together while keeping them separate. In this one, Veran invites us to distinguish 3 cosmologies: the cosmology of the Aboriginal Australian, and the cosmology of the Western cosmology in the modern mathematics curriculum. This is a reflection that happens decades after she did this project. So it was a project where they developed an educational mathematics curriculum for Aboriginal Australians. But something else happened, what she calls a translating cosmology, that became evident to her through a conversation with one Aboriginal person that she was working with. The point that she makes here is for us to be aware of those translating cosmologies that are kind of hidden when we are super busy trying to get some indigenous group and Western thinking. She suggests that a concept should be means to negotiate the flimsy boundaries of the multiverse, because that's where, in those boundaries, where actually we could find a way to meet. So the particular section of the book where she actually, the particular section of the reading where she actually realized that there was a translating cosmology, it was through a book that was not part of the formal curriculum, a book that the Dalwangu clan developed to teach their children to read English. But it was about a story about a massacre that almost wiped out this particular Aboriginal Australian community. So these are the nuances that we as practitioners have to bear in mind when we are working with pluriversal ideas. This is what I feel that she's trying to tell us. That, for instance, this part of the account when she says, and when I realized that when I saw the book and the odd bodily feeling of profound wrongness, you know, these are the sort of kind of feelings that we have to be mindful of, to be tuned in when we are doing our practitioner work. Finally, there are 2 more chapters. I will go through them quickly. Chapter 5 is the Naturalizing Nature by Lo and Lien. And in this chapter is very interesting one, because what they do is they do analysis of a set of practices in a particular environment that to make evident the cultural nature divide. And they talk about of a non-coherent response might be better to give way to pluriversal ways of responding, perhaps. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So what they are investigating is practices around salmon production in Norway, and how culture and nature come together in this practice. They use STS, the STS tools to untangle of these different interactions. What they are suggesting is that we need to denaturalize the non-coherences. Actually, perhaps the non-coherences, the things that appear not to be quite logical, perhaps we should take them into consideration, and they will be the elements that will provide some information for a pluriversal opportunity. The chapter is carefully crafted, structured in the reporting, and what they do is that they organize the analysis in 9 different sections to tell us the nature-culture interactions in salmon aquaculture practices in Norway. The end of the chapter is an interesting discussion because they draw different concepts together, and the one that jumped to me was the one of the origins of Romanticism. They used it to explain national identity, economic growth, how this was expressed in some of the tourist activities to invite people, to visit Norway for fishing, leisure activities. They suggest us that perhaps look at the principles of Romanticism to generate a pluriverse, because when Romanticism was connected to egalitarianism is when we had all the problems emerging. The particular diagram that I am showing in the picture is the one that actually suggests the possibility for nature and culture to be together. So out of the 9 elements of analysis, the number 8 is the one that is possibly showing us a way forward for pluriversal activity. And finally, chapter 6, Humans and Terrence in the Gaia World, by Viveiros de Castro and Danowski. So there is a growing sentiment in contemporary culture, they say. They talk about 2 actants in our mytho-anthropology, so the humankind and the world. And the world, they group it species and planets, societies and the environments, subject and object, thought and being. They work with their analysis is guided by the works of Chakrabarti, Anes, and Latour. And basically what they are telling us is that we are in a war. And that in this war, we are going to have actually to declare it in order to be able to make peace. I loved it, because the thing is that in order for a pluriversal design opportunity, we need to say, yeah, the world is a little bit of a mess, or is a big mess. So now what we are going to do about it. And they say there is a need for a reconceptualization and reconfiguration of the notion of humanity and world, and analysis, and this is what the chapter is about. So, well, I finished with my takes in the chapter.
Gloria, can you just explain what the difference between humans and Terrans? That's the title of the chapter. That I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, so I'm finishing now because probably, so it's time. I have my own personal conclusions, and if we have time for it, we could do it at the very end. But I think that now we can open the floor and for everyone else to jump in, right? So yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you. I wonder if we don't want to go straight to your thoughts and then we continue the discussion after.
Yes.
You want to go through my thoughts? No.
Yeah. Yes. Tell us.
Okay.
Yeah.
some resulting thoughts. Okay. So in okay, I need to remove this from here. So in my opinion, the reasoning for each author is what is of value to the project, A World of Many Worlds. The historical background to the generation of concepts, for instance, the notions, statements, is interesting. I mean, I really enjoy that. How indigenous, modern, and contemporary knowledge are interconnected in a pluriversal sort of way to show that one knowledge is not privileged over the other. They take careful consideration to these connections. They are very careful, but I guess it's because of the tradition as philosophers and anthropologists, that they are able to do that so well. The work cited, one author calls them allies. I love how they call the authors that they bring into play, they call them allies, used to develop the arguments and weave together related ideas that appear disparate, bring to forth or live a new way of interpreting an outcome, whether it's recent, like the Madrid exhibition, or a 90s educational curriculum project in Northern Australia. And also, for instance, the Salmon project as well. You know, it appears very technical, very straightforward, but no, everything is in the detail and in the nuances and how they related to concepts like romanticism, for instance. You know, I wasn't expecting to find something like that. Some chapters follow a more traditional approach. They provide an evidence summary conclusion at the end. Other chapters develop the argument, the thought experiment, engage you in the matter, provide multiple ways to weave the ideas, but do not provide a definite conclusion. And I think that this is very important for the process that they wanted to start with the book. And I think that this is something that probably designers like us will love, because it's like we can take it as an inspiration and then, you know, work with it and find a way to make it our own, as we designers like to do. Okay, I'm going to skip this one for a minute because I would like to go through the new concepts. There are new concepts or new understandings of concepts, at least new to me. For instance, pluriverse and multiverse. One of the authors talks about James using multiverse as an alternative to pluriverse. So that's something that I didn't know, that there are two concepts to refer to the same thing. Who is a citizen in the Greek sense? In chapter 3, there is, you know, for instance, I didn't know that in the Greek sense, citizens, if for instance, excluded immigrants, you know, it excluded slaves and also excluded non-humans. So that's the reason why this particular author says that we can, when we are relating to the pluriverse, we cannot be citizens, we have to be diplomats. The art of diplomacy, you know, versus isonomia. So isonomia is connected to the idea of citizenship, you know, where everyone is equal, but we cannot really do that with the pluriverse, because in the pluriverse, we need to, the citizen concept doesn't include non-humans. Therefore, yeah, we cannot be used. And we have to disconnect the concept of politics from that. The original meaning of the word culture, for instance, I didn't realize that the word culture was developed to separate Europe from the rest of the world. So it's important that we know those origins, I think. Where word and world descriptions, this is how they interact with in their analysis. This is how, I feel like this is how they differentiate things. Indigenous knowledges or concepts. These are in most chapters, but certainly not in chapter 5. Chapter 5, that's a very interesting thing, which is concentrated in modern contemporary practices. And the authors call us a modern tribe. So we are modern tribes, you know, that have elements or relations with traditional tribes. Concepts that we need to become aware of, and I feel like they should be part of a pluriversal glossary: cosmologies, cosmopolitics, political ontologies. Another concept, science being ruled by relevance and not by authority, was another big one for me. I find that some concepts like this could be useful for my own academic, intellectual, and philosophical backgrounds for a creative generative design activity, such the type I do, which is applied design research. I feel that I could, you know, attach myself to them and do something with it. And there are more concepts, you know, it's like these were just popping out. I won't explain them, but because I think these are more familiar to most of us. The final one probably is the ecology of practices. So actually what they are inviting us to think is that there is not only one practice, there is an ecology of practices that are always in play when you are going for pluriversal interactions. and that and that we just need to, I'm going to use a less academic word, just, just go with it and see what comes out of those interactions of relevance, not so much of authority, but of relevance. And I think that's it. Thank you.
No. Go back to this slide that you skipped. We want everything.
Yes, everything.
Okay.
No.
The one I skipped, that.
Yes.
This one. So what are my ways of relating to this book? Yeah. See, and as an academic who loves to read philosophical, anthropological, ethnographic works, I found the collection fascinating. As an applied design researcher searching for ways to apply pluriversal principles to my work, I could foresee some applications in relation to my work. So for instance, the concepts I use in my applied research in novel educational practice, I will repeat: rapid ethnographic approaches, interactions, interfaces, prototype, STD, educational curriculum, among others. The cases are indeed mostly analytic, ethnographic, and attempt to bring together stories of situations, people, places, to explain the emergence of an idea or a concept. The case's relevance to practice emerges through, in spite of depicting stories from a particular place or situation, they show hope. So it's hard to go through some of the articles, chapters. It's painful, take time, but there's a lot there to digest and to assimilate and to wrestle with. I relate to way. Okay, I felt closer to the work of Duran, Law, and Lay, I think, and Corsin, just because the way that they reported it, it was easy for me to digest as a applied designer. So for instance, if you want to bring your students to these who are very hands-on, probably those are the chapters to start with. And then I love to learn about the science of war, the science wars, because I felt it, I experienced it through my PhD training, but didn't know that there was a thing called science wars. Like when I was going through my PhD training, I could see all my different mentors, the ones who were in natural sciences fighting with the ones who were in the social sciences, and I could see that there was a knowledge fight, but I didn't understand why. But of course, it's all who is claiming to have the power, and apparently physics is the one that has the power over mythology. And that needs to be changed too, because if we want a pluriversal way of doing the academy, that is a thinking that has to be phased out. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Lots to digest there. I'm sure everyone is like just thinking and thinking and thinking. But I suppose we could open up the floor for some comments and feedback. And meanwhile, I'll drop some links in the chat. But if anyone wants to just grab the mic and say something. So I know that every week we have some people who have read it and some people who have not read it. Anybody in the Reddit camp wants to give some feedback? And then the didn't read camp, you can ask questions as well. It's a welcome, safe space.
Okay.
Gloria, I see Renata. Yes.
Okay. So I didn't read all the chapters. I have to say that from the chapters that I read, I also like Law. That was like so much more visual, so it was easier for a designer. Oh my god, that's unfortunately it's true. And I really like the last one of Viveiros de Castro, that who are the Terrans? So he distinguished humans and Terrans. Terrans would be like the people of the Pachamama, people who have this relationship with land, that is not like the abstract human, universal human. And I think it's very interesting. Can we start to think about a Terran-centered design? I think it's something to think about it. So that is another chapter that I really enjoyed. But yes, thank you so much for the presentation. It was amazing, Gloria.
I feel, I mean, I remember when I put my hand up and you wrote back and said, oh, I really love this book. Yeah, I can see why it speaks to us as designers, because it just ignites our imagination. And because philosophers speculate, and anthropologists, for instance, some of the anthropologists that are cited, they have been spending a lot of time with indigenous communities completely away, you know, so they learn about other cosmologies and other ways of being, and then they come back to to our modern world, and then probably they see the disconnect. So that's a conversation that I don't see on, you know, in the readings I do for everyday work, you know. So if we are looking for broadening our horizons in terms of readings, I think these are the type of things that they will be good for us to do.
I do have a question for you, Gloria.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your summary. I didn't read the book, so it was very useful. And I plan to read the book in the future. But I would like if you could draw any relationship to our previous meeting where we discussed decolonizing design, and this decolonizing movement. To me, it seems like it has some differences in the way it treats this epistemological differences relationship. Instead of arguing that there's different kind of knowledges and they are all equal and not privileged, there's no privilege, decolonizing would go towards denouncing that we do have privileges, and global north knowledge is always privileged. So we need some reparative actions. So we need to fight something which is already here. But this pluriversality seems like they don't want to fight in this way. But maybe there was some chapters that spoke about this war. So how would they position themselves according to these unequal epistemological relationships? Do they want to keep it in a peaceful way? Do they want to have a war? How do they deal with this?
They want to have a war. They want to have a war, but it's a war, not a war of, you know, in the traditional sense. It's just like one of the authors cites Bruno Latour and says, to make peace, we need to say we are at war, things are in chaos, so we can start a process of a transformation. So the other thing is that divergent opinions are supposed to be part of that new conversation in the pluriversal world. So there is no one opinion privileged to the other. Like the author that talks about that deals with ontological politics, I forget her name now. She talks, for instance, she explains is that the history of the physics and mythology, you know, how that separation happened when we think that physics is better than that other kinds of sciences. In a pluriversal world, actually, physics and mythology need to be considered equally relevant. And the relevance is given by the usefulness to the societies that are, you know, engaging with a particular practices or a set of practices. So it's a different type of thinking that I have no problems with, but then again, that's the type of designer I am. However, I can see that that there is problem with the scientific knowledge that we handle, you know, that we privilege some topics or knowledges or peoples over others. So, for instance, they say there will be people who will not agree to think that a river is a being, and that we need to consider the rights of that river. Or, for instance, the chapter about salmon, cultivating salmon in Norway, and how these are some species are selected over others, and all these interactions, these designs are, the implications to the wild salmon, for instance, that they are disappearing. So these are, I think, they are just wanting us to notice. I think that's what it is. And then notice and act from there, what I feel.
I love the war image, right? I mean, I'm just bringing in some random ideas that I thought of when you were talking. Like in some of what when I talk about the pluriverse and pluriversality and multiversality, I actually talk about SpiderMan Into the Spiderverse, to make it kind of clear to people, oh, this is how this is one way of looking at it, because there are like 5 different perspectives in that that animated film. There are many different kinds of Spider-Man in that movie. And then when I talk about it, then people are like, oh, that's what you mean, all of these different perspectives. And then when you were talking about it, I just imagined like a Marvel Endgame kind of scene with all of these characters fighting. Because I've actually started reading like a lot of graphic novels that are presenting like very serious information. And I thought, oh, we could be doing a pluriversal Endgame kind of graphic novel. So just my random thoughts to add to the mix. Anyone else? I know Tai, you had put something into the chat. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I think there was something on that chapter on page 191 that I thought was really interesting, because I think their idea is that the war is not it's not an event that happens and then it's gone. It's something that is ongoing. So he uses the image of the fractal again. So the war as a fractal event, indefinitely reproduced at different scales. So I think there is a way of thinking of wars at different scales and how we can engage in these wars at different scales. I think that's a point, as something that is ongoing.
I think it's the idea of also engaging with the conflict, like we tend not to be in conflict, accept that there is a conflict and then find a way through, so yes. I feel like if we want a pluriverse, we are going to have to talk, and that's the exhibition hall where the radical collective and the city hall people were meeting around this table with their artifact, for the exhibition. That's an example where they were dialoguing. It was not a perfect dialogue, but it was a start of something. So what that prototype, that's how the author called it, a prototype, an ongoing draft, where everyone was interacting around, where conflict could be possible, and you go in and out, and but not to think that there is one prevalence over the other. Yeah, it could. Another author was saying it will be difficult to think that that's possible, but then again, it's because of our education, the how we have got to here over 4 or 5 centuries of modern thought. So, but then again, when we go back to review some of that thinking, like the Romanticism origins, we realize that perhaps it's our interpretation again, the one that has changed what that meaning was before. So sometimes I thought, okay, so perhaps what we need to do is to go back and review our history and see how we can reinterpret it again. So nothing is set in stone. And when I was thinking, I said, I hope I can inspire some people to go into this book. My husband was calling it, it's a bright little book, that one you're reading. And I said, oh yeah, it is. It's a little tough nut, but just for me, it could not be for others. But for me, who is always just thinking applied, making, so it was a bit challenging, but at the same time, it was eye-opening, because then it's making me think about what my own practice. Okay, what we are designing the company today. Are we designing pluriversal tools for pluriversal opportunities or not? What it is that I am designing, and that's what the book is making me think about. It's like, or yeah, what it is that I am bringing into the world.
I know Yoram has a
Yes,
question.
no, not question, but thanks, Gloria, for the presentation. I mean, the things that you choose to pinpoint resonate significantly with my thinking also. So not to advertise too much, but I co-authored a book that appeared this year in MIT Press. The title is "We Are Not Users: Dialogues, Diversity, and Design." So some of the concepts in the title you mentioned, for example, diversity. I mean, pluriverse, diversity. The fact that all sources of knowledge are privileged. They have something to say, and we cannot think that one has more importance than another. If we take, for example, nature as an actor with voice, then we immediately go into sustainability without any problem. So it's just a natural step in this way. And again, you mentioned dialogue just a second ago. So and all this basically is critical aspect of design. I mean, there's no design without diversity, because not just there's no creativity, but the claim in the book that I wrote with two friends is that quality is served by multiple perspectives. If you don't bring enough perspective, or even one perspective is missing, then the whole endeavor can basically fail. And this is coming not from the perspective of let's say pluriverse, which is new for me. I mean, this concept is new for me, but coming from working with large corporations. I mean, the sort of classical, let's say, design work with large companies trying to help them in, I don't know, information systems. And we see that if you don't, I mean, if not everybody that need to participate in that, then things just fail. They don't last. They're not sustainable. Another thing that, I mean, the concept of war. So one thing that bothers me, for example, is that these ideas are great, but the mainstream design community does not follow them. And if we let's say go back a previous century, like people like Fuller Buckmeister, I don't know if you're familiar with him, and Schumacher and Papanek. I mean, these guys wrote a lot against the common perspective of design, capitalism, doing better, faster, whatever. But really, nobody listened to them. And I mean, there is a big problem. And I don't know, saying that, let's say we are at war, and I mean, I liked also the idea that work is a fractal, because design is fractal also. But I'm not sure that this is going to help us move into the direction that we think. So I don't know. To me, it's a mystery how let's say we that have these ideas can convince the other mainstream that these are the ideas that we should work with, let's say, I don't know, in the coming century, if we want to address world challenges, for example. So it's a long story. Thanks.
Yes, it's a story to close our session. It's definitely something that we all have to think about. I know we're at time, so that's why I'm kind of like immediately bringing it to close. Where with Yoram leaving us with food for thought.